Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever.
Has Disney's Snow White just become one of the biggest financial flops in recent memory? The film finally limped past $200 million worldwide, but that number hides a staggering truth about this catastrophic remake and what it means for its star, Rachel Zegler. The numbers don't lie.
Snow White starring Rachel Zegler opened to a dismal $43 million, snagging the title of the lowest debut weekend for any Disney live-action remake, beating 2019's Dumbo.
Snow White has been a disaster of epic proportions. While $200 million might sound impressive at first glance, let's put that into perspective. This film cost Disney a mind-blowing $300 million to produce after extensive reshoots. Add another $100 million for marketing, and you're looking at a $400 million investment that's only returned about $100 million to the studio after theaters take their cut.
Falling short of $270 million budget before promotion, leaving Disney facing a brutal loss. Entertainment media offered excuses with,
"That's not just disappointing, it's catastrophic." Disney is essentially $200 million in the hole on a single film, and it raises serious questions about why they would gamble such an astronomical amount on a relative newcomer like Rachel Zegler. Before Snow White, Zegler's only major role was in Spielberg's West Side Story, another box office disappointment. Yet somehow, Hollywood decided she should be the face of one of Disney's most iconic princess stories. The decision seems even more baffling when you look at what's happening with her current projects.
Who hates when I win. The winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them,
she's a good actress,
that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Zegler is now starring as Eva Peron in a major production of Evita at the prestigious London Palladium. This should be a triumphant follow-up to her film work. Instead, it's turning into another embarrassment. Every single seat for every single June performance is still available. Not some seats, all of them. The ticket website shows nothing but green lights indicating complete availability. Nobody's buying tickets. For comparison, other productions running at the same time, like John Lithgow's show, have far more limited availability. That's what happens when you cast someone with actual drawing power. The Evita situation reveals a harsh truth. Despite Hollywood's insistence, Zegler simply doesn't have the star power they desperately want her to have. But what makes this whole situation fascinating isn't just the box office numbers. It's how Zegler herself contributed to Snow White's downfall before it even hit theaters. In multiple interviews, she made statements that seemed dismissive of the original animated classic.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Describing the prince as stalkerish and suggesting the remake would correct the supposedly outdated elements of the 1937 film. These comments created an instant backlash among fans of the original, essentially telling potential audiences that she didn't respect or understand why they loved the classic in the first place. It's PR 101. Don't insult the source material you're adapting, especially when it's beloved by millions. The film's underwhelming 37% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes tells us something else important. Snow White isn't bad because of Zegler. It's bad in spite of her. The writing is fundamentally flawed at its core. Even Meryl Streep couldn't have saved this train wreck. One verified review points out that the original Snow White was a perfect 10 out of 10, and if you're going to remake a classic, you need to actually remake it, not transform it into something unrecognizable. The question now becomes, how many commercial failures can a young actor survive before studios stop taking these enormous financial risks? Traditionally, the answer would be not many. But Hollywood seems determined to make Zegler happen regardless of the warning signs. Her next major project was the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. While that film performed decently with $330 million worldwide against a $100 million budget, it was part of an established franchise with a built-in audience. Zegler wasn't the primary draw. The Hunger Games brand was doing the heavy lifting. What's particularly revealing about this whole situation is how it reflects a fundamental shift in the entertainment landscape. Traditional star power doesn't guarantee success the way it once did. Audiences are increasingly drawn to concepts, franchises, and storytelling quality rather than who's on the poster. Yet Hollywood keeps trying to force create stars through massive projects rather than letting bankability develop naturally through consistently good work in appropriately sized roles. The industry seems to have forgotten that audience connection can't be manufactured. It has to be earned. Look at other successful young actors like Florence Pugh, Timothée Chalamet, or Zendaya. They followed a more measured path, mixing smaller, critical darlings with strategic mainstream projects. They allowed their audience to grow naturally rather than being immediately positioned as the centerpiece of 300 million gambles. The smarter career path for Zegler would be a strategic retreat from leading massive productions. Taking supporting roles in well-received smaller films would allow her to rebuild credibility with critics and audiences without bearing the entire weight of a project's success or failure. Disney is clearly desperate to salvage something from this disaster. They're planning to release Snow White in China this June, hoping for a miracle to mitigate their losses. But the Chinese box office has become increasingly selective about which Western films they embrace, and there's little reason to believe this culturally specific fairy tale will suddenly resonate there.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
The Snow White saga ultimately reveals much more about Hollywood's dysfunctional decision-making than it does about any individual performer. It's a case study in how the industry's echo chamber can lead to spectacular miscalculations when executives lose touch with what audiences actually want. Meanwhile, Disney shareholders are left wondering how a studio that once seemed infallible could burn $200 million on a project that showed red flags from the very beginning. And Rachel Zegler finds herself in the unenviable position of being Hollywood's next big thing that audiences simply aren't interested in seeing. The industry will likely slowly distance itself from these massive investments in her as a leading lady, not through any dramatic blacklisting, but through the quiet adjustment of casting decisions. Studios simply can't afford to ignore financial realities indefinitely, no matter how committed they are to certain casting choices. What do you think about Disney's Snow White disaster? Is Rachel Zegler being unfairly blamed, or did Hollywood set her up for failure by thrusting her into these massive roles too quickly? Let me know in the comments below.